Chosen ones, heaven has been speaking. You just started listening. For so long, the universe has whispered through coincidences, signs, dreams, delays, and divine interruptions. But only now are your ears tuned to the frequency of heaven. This video is for you, the one who's been feeling different, detached, yet strangely aligned. Stay until the end, because every word here is a seed meant to grow in your spirit. As you listen, open your heart, leave your warmest wishes, and the number 99 in the comments below. That's how we release energy together, how we ignite the spiritual current that moves through all of us. Now, chosen one, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's begin. Heaven has been speaking to you through silence, through the still moments that used to feel like emptiness, but are actually filled with divine instruction. The pauses in your life were never punishment. They were preparation. You weren't being ignored. You were being tuned. The delay, the rejection, the redirection, those were all forms of communication. You didn't miss the message. You simply weren't fluent yet in the language of spirit. Heaven doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes it speaks in peace after chaos, in endings that refuse to make sense, in doors that close softly before you can step through them. When you began to trust what couldn't be explained, that's when you finally started to listen. There's a moment every chosen one reaches when they realize that they were never alone in their transformation. The voice that guided you through pain wasn't your imagination, it was alignment. That sudden feeling of knowing, that intuition that feels stronger than logic, is how heaven confirms what your soul already understood. You've been hearing guidance disguised as instinct. Heaven has been rearranging your circumstances, removing people, changing plans, and redirecting your path so that you would start hearing with your heart, not your ears. For a long time you were surrounded by noise, the opinions, the doubts, the fears that told you what you could or couldn't be. But heaven doesn't compete with chaos. It waits until you are quiet enough to feel it. That's why isolation became sacred. Your solitude wasn't punishment. It was training. You were being separated so that you could finally differentiate between the world's voice and God's whisper. In the stillness, your perception sharpened. You began to recognize patterns, synchronicities, numbers, and symbols that repeated until you could no longer call them coincidence. The clock reading 11:11, the same song playing at just the right moment, the sudden chills when someone mentions purpose, those were transmissions. Each one a reminder that you were on the right path, even when it didn't look that way. Heaven's communication is patient. It repeats its message through different channels until you finally pay attention. The conversation has always been two-way. Your prayers were never lost. They were answered through signs that your physical eyes overlooked. Every time you said, "Give me a sign," the universe responded in a language of alignment. People leaving, situations collapsing, truth revealing. You thought things were falling apart, but they were falling into place. Listening to heaven is not about hearing a voice from the clouds. It's about discerning patterns that align with peace. Peace is the proof. Whenever you're uncertain, remember this: what brings confusion is not from heaven. What brings calm is. The chosen ones are awakening in waves across the world. You may have felt this collective rising, the pull toward higher awareness, the sudden craving for truth over comfort. You are not imagining it. This is the spiritual frequency of awakening. Heaven is amplifying its messages because humanity is ready to shift from survival to spiritual sensitivity. You were chosen not because you are better, but because you are willing to hear, to see, to transform. You volunteered at the soul level to remember who you are in a world that profits from forgetfulness. That remembrance began the day you stopped fighting what was leaving and started thanking what stayed. Listening to heaven changes everything. You stop chasing, you start aligning. You stop forcing outcomes. You start flowing with divine timing. You begin to realize that everything meant for you carries your signature. You don't have to beg for what's yours. The relationships, opportunities, and peace that belong to you recognize your energy. They are magnetized to your authenticity. But when your energy is clouded by fear, doubt, or attachment, you block the signal. That's why heaven often isolates chosen ones before elevation, to clear interference. Solitude purifies your frequency so that you can transmit and receive divine messages clearly. Have you noticed how certain conversations feel heavy, how certain environments drain your spirit? That sensitivity is not weakness, it's awareness. When you start listening to heaven, your soul develops discernment. You no longer digest every energy around you. You begin to guard your peace like it's sacred currency. And it is. Your peace is evidence of divine presence. It's the vibration that allows manifestation to occur effortlessly. When your heart is peaceful, you are in sync with heaven's frequency, and that is where miracles multiply. You've likely gone through seasons of loss, friends disappearing, opportunities dissolving, plans collapsing without explanation. These weren't losses, they were upgrades. Heaven removes what can't hear your frequency. When you elevate, silence becomes louder. It's not that people stopped caring. It's that your energy outgrew their echo. Every chosen one experiences this divine loneliness before expansion. Don't rush to fill it. That emptiness is sacred ground. It's where your next chapter is written in spirit before it manifests in the physical. Heaven has been preparing you through every heartbreak, every delay, every unanswered prayer. The moments that broke you were actually breakthroughs in disguise. They cracked your ego just enough for light to enter. Pain became the teacher that silence needed. When you finally surrendered, when you stopped demanding explanations, that's when heaven's messages became clear. They were never complicated. They were consistent. The right thing always feels simple, calm, and true. You started listening when you stopped arguing with peace. Many chosen ones say they began hearing heaven after something major collapsed, a relationship, a job, a version of themselves. Because collapse is often communication. The universe will dismantle what distracts you from your destiny. Heaven will use disruption to realign you. When everything falls apart, it's heaven saying, "This version of you can't carry what's coming next." The old self dissolves so the authentic self can emerge. Listening begins when resistance ends. And when you finally stop running from transformation, you start hearing purpose call your name. You've always had that inner knowing, that pull that defied logic. Even when you couldn't explain it, you knew something greater was orchestrating the details. Heaven speaks through inner resonance, through the energy that feels like home, even when it's unfamiliar. Every time you said, "I don't know why, but I just feel it," That was the divine frequency. Heaven doesn't convince, it confirms. The confirmation is peace, not pressure. Now that you're listening, you realize that heaven has never stopped communicating. The sunrise, the way your body feels lighter around certain people, the way opportunities return after you release control, those are all divine dialogues. Heaven's language is energy. Every thought is a signal, every emotion a frequency, every choice an agreement with a future version of yourself. The moment you align your actions with your higher knowing, heaven responds immediately. You begin to see repeating patterns. The right people appear, the wrong ones drift away, and situations rearrange themselves in perfect timing. That's the sound of alignment. Heaven's applause in disguise. Listening doesn't mean you'll understand everything. It means you trust even when you don't. Faith is not about seeing. It's about recognizing that the unseen is guiding the seen. When heaven speaks, it often asks you to step before the path is visible. That step is your yes. The moment you move in trust, unseen forces start rearranging reality to support your courage. Doors that once seemed sealed begin to open because energy recognizes conviction. You were never waiting for a sign. The sign was waiting for your belief. The reason you're hearing heaven now is because you've outgrown noise. You no longer crave validation. You crave vibration. You want connection that feels like clarity. That shift is spiritual maturity. It's how chosen ones move from seeking to knowing. You stop asking for proof and start becoming it. Your peace becomes prophecy. Every day you wake up aligned, you broadcast divine energy that impacts others silently. That's how heaven speaks through you, not just to you. You become the messenger once you've mastered the message. Your awakening has created ripples. People around you sense the change, even if they can't name it. You carry a presence that calms storms, that makes others reflect. That's divine energy in motion. Heaven is not just speaking, it's expressing itself through you. Your intuition, creativity, compassion, those are spiritual translations. Every time you act from love instead of fear, you're amplifying heaven's voice on earth. Listening is not passive, it's participatory. You hear, then you act. You feel, then you create. You receive, then you release. Sometimes heaven speaks by withholding. Silence is a message too. When you ask for something and it doesn't arrive, that's communication. Heaven isn't ignoring you, it's protecting you from what you think you want. Divine timing is never denial, it's design. The delay is instruction. It teaches patience, trust, and discernment. When it finally arrives, you'll understand why it had to take the time it did. Every unanswered prayer is an answered purpose in disguise. When heaven speaks, the message always carries love, even when it feels like loss. The breakup that freed you, the job that ended, the friend who left. Those were love letters written in divine handwriting. The universe removes what distracts you from your destiny. Listening means accepting love even in disguise. Every ending is an echo of beginning. You've been chosen to translate energy into understanding, to see meaning in the mundane, to connect dots others overlook. That's why you've always felt different, because you are wired to perceive what others ignore. Your sensitivity is sacred technology. You read energy fluently. That's why certain environments feel unbearable. You pick up frequencies that conflict with your peace. But that same gift allows you to sense opportunities before they appear, to know when to act and when to rest. Heaven speaks to chosen ones through intuition, sharpened by solitude. Every chosen one has a moment when listening becomes living, when faith stops being theory and becomes embodiment. You no longer talk about alignment. You walk in it. You stop forcing explanations. You trust divine orchestration. You start protecting your energy like it's sacred currency, because you finally realize it is. Your peace funds your purpose. Your alignment attracts abundance. The more you listen, the clearer life becomes. Confusion fades because you're no longer trying to control what heaven has already decided. Heaven's messages are infinite. They evolve as you do. As your awareness expands, so does the clarity of communication. You'll notice that your desires start to shift. What once mattered loses urgency. You start valuing simplicity, presence, authenticity. That's transformation. Listening isn't about gaining, it's about releasing. You shed versions of yourself that no longer resonate with your truth. And as you release, you rise. Right now, as you hear these words, something within you remembers the promise you made before birth, to be a vessel of light in a world of noise. That remembrance is not coincidence, it's confirmation. Heaven is reminding you of your role, to listen, to align, to lead through energy. You don't have to preach, your peace will teach. You don't have to force, your frequency will draw. The chosen ones don't chase, they channel. So take a breath, chosen one. Feel the presence that's always been with you. Heaven is not far. It's within you, around you, speaking through the rhythm of your own heartbeat. Every inhale is divine conversation. Every exhale a release of resistance. You are tuned now, attuned to the frequency of faith, alignment, and peace. From this moment on, life will sound different, because you're finally hearing it with your soul. There comes a point in every awakening when silence becomes sacred, when you no longer fear stillness, because you realize it is where the universe rearranges your path. You stop chasing noise and start trusting whispers. You stop praying for signs and start noticing how the wind feels different when you walk in peace. This is the stage you've entered, the realm of deep awareness, where heaven no longer needs to shout to get your attention. You are finally listening not just with your mind, but with your spirit. You've probably noticed how the world looks the same but feels different. The colors are sharper, the timing more precise. Conversations that once drained you now reveal hidden truths. You sense when something is meant for you long before it arrives. That's the mark of divine alignment, when your inner and outer realities start speaking the same language. The more you align, the more heaven trusts you with clarity. It's like being given the ability to see behind the curtain, not to control the play, but to understand its purpose. Listening to heaven is not about perfection. It's about presence. Every moment carries a message, but most people are too distracted to hear it. The world keeps telling you to move faster, achieve more, prove your worth, yet heaven keeps whispering, "Be still." Stillness is not stagnation, it's synchronization. When you're still, your frequency stabilizes, and heaven can deliver instructions clearly. The next step is always revealed in peace. Never panic. When you feel rushed, pause. That's usually where heaven is waiting. You may feel like you've lost interest in things that once thrilled you. The music changed, but not because the melody stopped playing. You simply outgrew the rhythm. This is the quiet evolution of the chosen ones. When heaven upgrades your frequency, lower vibrations no longer entertain you. Gossip, fear, comparison, they lose flavor. You start craving purpose, like oxygen. And that craving is heaven calling you into your next chapter. Don't resist it. The discomfort of transition is sacred proof that you are no longer satisfied with imitation peace. In this new sensitivity, your perception becomes sharper. You start noticing how energy behaves. You can feel when someone's words carry truth or when they echo emptiness. You sense when a room holds tension before anyone speaks. This isn't paranoia, it's perception. The chosen ones feel what others ignore. That's why isolation often becomes necessary. Not because you dislike people, but because you can no longer dilute yourself to make others comfortable. Solitude becomes your sanctuary, where you cleanse from the noise of the world and reconnect to the divine current flowing through you. Heaven has been guiding you through sensations long before you understood them. The shiver down your spine when something resonates, the heavy chest when something is off, the warmth that spreads through you when something aligns. Those are sacred communications. Your body is a divine instrument, a receiver of spiritual frequency. Every feeling carries instruction. When you ignore your intuition, you invite confusion. When you trust it, you return to flow. Listening to heaven is learning to interpret emotion as information. The universe is deliberate. Every encounter, delay, and detour has been orchestrated to refine your hearing. The people who misunderstood you were mirrors showing where you still needed validation. The opportunities that disappeared were teachers of timing. The moments that hurt you most became translators for empathy. Heaven doesn't waste pain. Every lesson is designed to sharpen your awareness. Once you realize this, gratitude replaces bitterness. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Thank you," because now you understand. It all had meaning. In this journey, humility becomes your armor. The more heaven reveals, the softer you become. Pride blocks perception. Humility amplifies it. When you surrender your need to control outcomes, you begin to flow with divine choreography. You notice how miracles don't feel dramatic anymore. They feel natural. Synchronicity becomes your normal. The right person calls at the right time. An unexpected opportunity appears just when you need it. A stranger says something that answers a silent question you've been carrying. That's heaven in real time, confirming your alignment. But let's be honest, listening isn't always comfortable. Sometimes heaven speaks by taking everything away. It empties your hands so you can finally receive what's meant for you. The pruning process is sacred but painful. You may feel forgotten when, in truth, you are being protected. Divine redirection often feels like loss until perspective matures. Heaven removes what cannot grow with you. People, habits, mindsets, versions of yourself that would sabotage your expansion. If it left, it wasn't rejection. It was recalibration. You were being prepared to hold more light. You may notice that after these endings, something subtle shifts. Your sensitivity to energy heightens. You begin to feel what heaven feels. You cry for things you once ignored. You care deeply for people you barely know. You see beauty in simplicity. This emotional depth isn't weakness. It's divine empathy. The chosen ones are emotional translators for heaven. You feel so others can heal. Your compassion becomes a conduit for transformation. That's why your presence alone shifts rooms, not because you're loud, but because your silence carries healing frequency. Heaven has been speaking through creation itself. The rustle of trees, the rhythm of waves, the way sunlight touches your skin, every element carries divine intelligence. When you begin to listen, the natural world becomes scripture. You start understanding that everything is alive with awareness. The flower doesn't rush to bloom. It trusts the season. The moon doesn't compete with the sun. It reflects in its own time. You are learning the same rhythm. You no longer force growth. You allow it. You no longer chase timing. You align with it. There will be moments when your faith feels tested, when heaven seems silent. Those are the sacred pauses designed to stretch your trust. The silence is not absence, it's amplification. When heaven stops speaking externally, it's inviting you to listen internally. The answers are already encoded within you. Every chosen one must learn that divine connection is not dependency. It's unity. Heaven is not somewhere above you. It breathes within you. When you realize this, you stop seeking and start embodying. You understand that every thought, every breath, every heartbeat is part of the same divine dialogue. As you continue listening, your desires evolve. What you once chased no longer satisfies. You begin desiring peace more than possessions, purpose more than praise, truth more than approval. This is the maturation of your spirit. The world might not understand it. It may call you distant, detached, mysterious. But you know what's happening. Heaven has been guiding you back to authenticity because that's where your power lives. Every time you honor your intuition, you amplify heaven's voice in your life. You stop doubting coincidences and start recognizing patterns. You realize that spiritual communication doesn't require ritual, it requires awareness. Prayer is not just talking, it's listening. Meditation is not just silence, it's reception. Every act done in awareness becomes sacred. Washing dishes, walking outside, breathing intentionally, all of it becomes communion when your consciousness is awake. And as you keep listening, you start noticing how energy responds to integrity. The universe rewards alignment. When your words match your actions, your reality transforms. When your intention is pure, the path clears. Heaven supports truth relentlessly. That's why dishonesty feels heavy. It vibrates out of tune with divine law. When you correct your energy, blessings return like echoes. You realize manifestation isn't about demanding from the universe. It's about cooperating with its rhythm. Heaven doesn't respond to fear. It responds to faith. There's a quiet joy that begins to bloom inside you during this stage. It's not loud or dramatic. It's steady, like sunlight through clouds. It's the peace that says, I don't need to know how. I just know it will. That's divine trust. You start carrying certainty without evidence. People may call it unrealistic, but that's because they still depend on proof. You depend on presence. You've experienced enough alignment to know that heaven never fails to deliver when the soul is ready. Timing is not punishment, it's preparation. listening changes how you love too. You begin to love from understanding rather than attachment. You no longer chase love to fill emptiness. You give love to express fullness. That's divine maturity, the shift from needing to radiating. The chosen ones are carriers of divine love disguised as ordinary people. Your compassion, your patience, your forgiveness, these are not weaknesses. They are frequencies heaven uses to heal others. Every act of kindness is a transmission. Every time you choose peace over reaction, you broadcast heaven's message louder than any sermon. When you begin to live like this, miracles follow naturally, not because you begged for them, but because you became the vibration of them. Heaven speaks fluently through aligned action. When your energy matches your intention, reality adjusts to mirror it. You don't need to force manifestation. You become it. Your present starts rearranging outcomes because you've become a vessel of divine coherence. You've learned that creation isn't something you do, it's something you allow. There will be times when others won't understand your peace. They'll wonder how you can remain calm while everything around you shifts. But that's the evidence of your awakening. You've learned that peace isn't the absence of chaos. It's the awareness that chaos has no power over you. You no longer react. You respond. You no longer fear endings. You understand their necessity. The chosen ones are not untouched by storms. They are simply rooted deep enough to sway without breaking. Heaven continues to speak, and the language keeps evolving. The lessons you once struggled with now return as reminders instead of tests. The same challenges that once terrified you now appear as gentle confirmations of growth. You realize that awareness doesn't eliminate contrast. It transforms how you experience it. Light and shadow are no longer enemies. They're collaborators in your expansion. Everything belongs. Every emotion, every experience, every person, all of it serves the unfolding of your consciousness. And now you walk differently. You speak slower, think deeper, love softer. You move with awareness. Your energy has become your language, and heaven responds fluently. Every day feels like dialogue now, between your higher self and the divine intelligence that orchestrates everything around you. You've become fluent in faith. Heaven has been speaking all along, and now that you're listening, everything makes sense. The chaos was conversation. The endings were education. The silence was synchronization. You were never being ignored. You were being initiated. The noise of the world was too loud, but once you turned inward, the signal became clear. You have entered the frequency where heaven speaks constantly, through intuition, through alignment, through peace. And now that you hear it, you'll never unhear it. Because once a chosen one starts listening, the universe never goes silent again.